Since October 7, Bassem Youssef, the Egyptian comedian, has been a prominent pro-Palestinian voice. Piers Morgan's interview with him exploded in popularity with over 20 million views, which led to him being interviewed on lots of different podcasts. In this video, I will be exposing some of his lies. Some are straightforward lies where he must know that he's lying, and some are more general lies that are popular among pro-Palestinians. I have a lot to say here. Maybe you will agree with me and maybe you won't, but I will say that for me, the saddest thing about all this, after watching hours of interviews with him, is how he, a liberal Egyptian comedian, is echoing the views of the Islamists. As a charismatic comedian, he knows to read his audience and deliver what he says in a way that is really compelling for liberal audiences. Let's start with his personal story with his family in Gaza.
I'm very sorry for what your family are going through in Gaza, and I mean that very sincerely.
By the way, I don't know. I don't know I don't know him. By the way, I haven't actually met them. They didn't even come to my wedding. They couldn't because they are stuck in Gaza.
Okay.
And she never saw them because Gaza is not a destination.
Bassem, as I say,
we hear their voices and it's they die. It's fine. It's fine.
I like his dark sense of humor. Bassem Youssef is called the Jon Stewart of Egypt, and I must say that I like his sense of humor much more than that of Jon Stewart. And what can I say? He has never met his family in Gaza because of Israel. That is very sad. Oh, I don't know what to say. Gaza and Egypt share a border. Israel left Gaza in 2005 hoping that it would promote peace. And Egypt and Gaza have a border with no Israelis between them. A few times during the interviews, when Bassem is asked some hard questions, he said that he is a comedian and not an expert. And I couldn't agree more. So we admit he's no expert on the matter, but Bassem, basic geography. Don't you know that your country, Egypt, has a border with Gaza? Or are you lying in order to make Israel look bad? Blame me for genocide. I can handle that. But don't blame me for not being able to see your mother-in-law. And that leads me to a few words about the people who were interviewing Bassem. Apart from asking about his own personal story, none of them asked Bassem about Egypt. Yes, there is a war between Israel and the Palestinians, but these podcasts are long. Some of them are 2 hours long. Bash Israel for an hour and a half, but say a word about Egypt. What is there to say about Egypt? If you follow the mainstream media, then you would be forgiven for thinking that Egypt is not an extreme Muslim country. Egypt used to be home to an ancient Jewish community. About 80,000 Jews lived in Egypt 100 years ago. Today, there are 3 Jews left. This is what ethnic cleansing looks like. Bassem blames Israel for ethnic cleansing and genocide against the Arabs. Yet if you check the numbers, it is his country that is responsible for ethnic cleansing. It is not just the Jews. The Coptics, the Egyptian Christians, are also subjected to violence and discrimination. In Egypt, there is a phenomenon of Muslims kidnapping Christian girls. I bet you never heard about that. And now I'm going to tell you something really wild that I hope that you will check for yourself rather than just take my word for it. 80% of women in Egypt are subjected to FGM. Google it if you don't know what it is. You will be shocked at how utterly barbaric it is. Not a single moderator, and I've watched dozens of clips, said, "Hey, before bashing Israel, maybe a quick word about your home country, which is part of the region." Bassem does talk about his personal story and about how he ended up in the US.
It became the biggest show in the Middle East, and I had 40 million people watching each episode.
And so how does that end? So did you just...
Oh, I was kicked out. I had my show canceled a couple of times. I had even the satellite signal jammed a couple of times. I had lawsuits. I had shows shut down. People threatened around me. I was threatened. And then by both regimes. I went through 3 different regimes.
Oh, wow.
military, Islamist military, and then they both hated me.
And that's when it's you.
Yeah. When you make fun of people and everybody hates, it's like, okay, I think you're doing the right thing. And I couldn't do the show anymore, so I escaped. I left Egypt 2014. I came here.
I find it incredible that neither Bassem nor the moderators said anything about the society that Bassem came from. He was forced to leave Egypt because he came under threat from two regimes, the military regime and the Islamic regime, which, by the way, are the only two options in Arab countries. Other than that, he mentions that he was on the receiving end of death threats. He had to flee Egypt so he wouldn't be jailed for what? For making some jokes on a late-night show? What happened to defending the value of free speech? I find it unbelievable that they weren't interested in discussing that with Bassem. Now, I don't agree with Bassem on many things, but you can clearly see that he is a nice, funny guy who doesn't want to talk about revolution and killing. But still, he was apparently too much for an Arab Muslim country, since he had to get himself out of there. But none of that is discussed. Why talk about Egypt with an Egyptian when you can just bash Israel? Let's see what Bassem has to say about Israel.
Israel is a racist, apartheid country that is projecting this shiny example of secularism and democracy for the people, so people can accept whatever they do.
So, Israel is a racist apartheid country, and he elaborates and talks about the Israeli Arabs.
Have you talked to them about their healthcare and their schools? Because they're about like 25 Arab cities that they don't have hospitals or schools. They have to take...
In Gaza or in the West Bank?
No, I'm talking about inside Israel. I'm talking about Arabs with Israeli passports, fully fledged Israeli citizens. They don't have a single cinema, they don't have a single hospital, they don't have a single school in their cities, and they have to go to the Jewish states in order to go there.
First big lie. No schools and hospitals in Arab towns? What is it talking about? There are schools in every Arab town in Israel. And in Nazareth, the biggest Arab city in Israel, there are actually 3 hospitals: Nazareth Hospital, Holy Family Hospital, and the French Hospital. He continues with another bold-faced lie.
I'm just saying that the security and the equality that Israel wants you to think that they have it between all of their Arabs, it is not true. They have something called zoning committees, where you as an Arab coming in to get an auction, to get a house in a Jewish town, you will not be allowed to take it.
There is no zoning in Israel. There are Arabs living in Tel Aviv, in Haifa, and Jerusalem. There are communities living in small settlements in Israel. I, for example, live in a kibbutz, which is a community. You can't just buy a house here. You need to be a member first, and there is a committee that checks to see if you will fit in. And only after a year of living here, the members vote on whether to accept you or not. The vast majority of Arabs don't try to get accepted because we speak Hebrew in the kibbutz and the Arabs speak Arabic, and we celebrate the Jewish holidays. And the women here don't cover themselves like in Arab villages. And for the same reason, there are no ultra-Orthodox Jews in my kibbutz, because some of the food we eat is not kosher, and we have events on Saturdays. And the synagogue is not really in use. And by the way, it cuts both ways. The Arabs would never sell a Jew a house in an Arab village, and I wouldn't try to buy a house in an ultra-Orthodox neighborhood, as I wouldn't fit in with the other people living there. If Israel is an apartheid state, then name me some laws that discriminate against Arabs. Israeli Arabs study and work in any profession they choose, and they enjoy more rights than in any other Arab country. Let me tell you something that most Israelis don't even know. An Israeli Arab judge sent the president of Israel to jail because the president was a criminal. Now, most Israelis don't know that because it is so unimportant. The Israelis don't care what religion or ethnicity the judge holds. The important thing is that the president was a criminal. And Bassem Youssef knows that. Adam asks him, so why don't they leave? And Bassem's answer really is priceless.
So why don't they leave?
Well, some of them actually, because it is basically, it is between like a rock and a hard place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the whole idea about like Arabs living a wonderful life, they're living good life compared to other Arab countries, which is a really low bar.
So he admits that the Arabs in Israel live a good life. And he adds that that's if we compare it to Arab countries, which is a really low bar. So Israel is a terrible apartheid racist state that commits ethnic cleansing and genocide. Yet it is a much better place to live than the surrounding Arab countries, which are Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and his own country, Egypt. And it gets better.
Are there any Middle Eastern countries you just would not feel safe going, or just completely uncomfortable going there telling jokes? What countries?
For now, for me, Egypt.
Straight up. Like, would you go to Afghanistan? Would you go to Iraq? Would you go to Syria?
Afghanistan, no. Syria, no. Iraq, no.
Would you ever perform in Israel?
No.
You would not.
No.
Why? They would accept you.
I don't accept them.
You don't accept Israel, the state of Israel.
No, I don't accept them taking care of me getting in. That's no problem. The problem is when you go in Israel, it's not about going in Israel or not. It's the fact that they really show you a terrible time. You go in the security, they treat you like shit.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I've been invited by Palestinians a lot to go to there. And so, like, I would go to you, but, like, I don't want to deal with the border control of Israel.
So Bassem wouldn't feel safe performing in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, or Egypt, his own country. But he knows that he is safe in Israel. I think that what he said is true. He doesn't accept Israel. He was quick to correct himself and say that it is because of security. But like many Egyptians, he actually doesn't accept Israel. He just said it, but immediately understood that it wasn't a smart thing to admit, so he went back on it. I'm going to tell you what Bassem forgot to say about Egypt and Israel. There has been a peace treaty between Israel and Egypt for almost 50 years. Yet the hatred that the Egyptians feel toward Israel is still very much there. Here is a small example. If an Egyptian writer visits Israel or even speaks to an Israeli publicly, he will be dismissed from the Egyptian Writers Association. Even the writers who are usually considered more educated and open-minded still have this hatred. I will say that he is right about security. If he visited Israel, he would be asked a lot of questions. If you are a young male flying alone and you come from a Muslim country, you will certainly be asked more questions than an Israeli Jew. Definitely. But there is a reason. Never has a Jew hijacked or bombed a plane. Sadly, I can't say that about the Arabs. You know, in the name of equality, you can also sell pregnancy tests to men. But we all know what the results will be. Bassem, be honest. The reason you won't be visiting Israel is not because of a few questions at the security counter. You can cope with that. It's because if you visit Israel, then your Arab audience will accuse you of recognizing Israel. The next lie is one that people from the West probably wouldn't pick up on.
I'm talking about Israel.
Okay.
All right? So the killing has to stop. And I'm not talking about Gaza. I'm talking about what they do in the West Bank. Every single day in the West Bank, all of these people are being killed in the West Bank. And there's no Hamas came out from West Bank to do the 7th of October.
What is the proportionate response?
But I don't know, but there's no Hamas in the West Bank and they're still dying there. So what's your excuse?
So Bassem is saying in Gaza there is Hamas. But Israel is also killing Palestinians in the West Bank, where there is no Hamas. If a pro-Palestinian American student were to say that, I would say, okay, they don't know what they are talking about. But this is not the case with Bassem. Of course, Hamas is in the West Bank as well. They are just not in power there yet. And Bassem knows this. Hamas is a part of the Muslim Brotherhood, which is an Islamist movement that started in Egypt and has even been in power in Egypt. This is a huge movement with many sub-organizations. By the way, in 1994, the Americans got a hold of a Muslim Brotherhood plan to destroy the West from within through Muslim organizations. Not only is Hamas in the West Bank, It is by far the strongest movement there. Here is a poll that was conducted by the Palestinians themselves. 82% of Palestinians in the West Bank support the October 7th attack. So 82% support the biggest massacre against Jews since the Holocaust. And 85% are satisfied with how Hamas is conducting this war. Here is a short video from Palestinian TV in Ramallah. Now, those who don't agree with me will accuse me of cherry picking. So I will leave a link to Palestinian Media Watch, which translates official Palestinian TV into English. Now let's move on to the next lie.
From what to, from when to where?
This is in 1990 to 2022.
Do you know why they increased?
Because they're having babies like crazy.
No. You see, this is how like when you watch that while being uninformed makes you look very stupid.
Tell me why. Tell me how the population has gone from 2 million to 5 million.
Yeah, because most of the 1.5 extra million didn't come from Gaza. They were pushed away from other parts of Israel.
What was that? Most of the 1.5 million extra people didn't come from Gaza, but rather they were pushed away from other parts of Israel. So Israel has forced 1 million Arabs into Gaza over the last 30 years. Bassem Youssef's imagination really is working overtime here. Israel has pushed 0 Arabs into Gaza. Disagree with me? Give me the names of any Israeli Arabs who had their Israeli citizenship taken away from them before being thrown into Gaza. There is no limit to the crazy allegations made against Israel by the Arabs. There are so many lies that I haven't been able to squeeze them all into one video. So the next video will be about the biggest lies he tells. Please subscribe so you won't miss it. I want to finish up with a conversation Bassem had with Mahdi on Jewish and Christian extremism, a topic that I haven't gone into before. Bassem and Mahdi do a great job of stoking the tension around the Temple Mount.
There are a bunch of messianic people in Israel who want to build the third temple, right? There's 2 previous temples destroyed by the Romans, the last one, 70 AD. And right now there is a movement, a temple movement in Israel and supported abroad that wants to rebuild the temple. The only slight problem is they want to rebuild it on top of Al-Aqsa, which is one of the holiest sites for Muslims in Jerusalem.
Are you saying that those people are using religious ideas in order to push political agendas so they can bring back...
I thought only Muslims do that.
They can bring back...
No, they can't, Bassem, because they're not Muslims.
Jesus and the end of the world.
No, you're not.
No, I thought we are the only one. We're the crazy ones. No, don't tell me.
You've jumped
I do
ahead.
not believe you. I do not believe you. No. I did not leave the Middle East escaping from dictatorships and religious extremism to come here to be ruled by a bunch of peasants from Texas with extreme religious view, putting what? We are going to get the red heifers. We are going to slaughter them, burn them, and then mix them. But it's not a sacrifice. I just wanted to make this clear. We're gonna take those animals, slaughter them, burn
Red
them,
Angus.
turn them into ashes. But it's not sacrifice. It's a ceremony. I cannot find better like gaslighting techniques like this.
My wife's family's from Texas. I can never have a steak in Texas again, Red Angus, without thinking about without thinking about the end of times.
So there are crazy Christians and Jews who are doing weird stuff to bring about the end of the world. Apparently, there are extremist evangelical Christians and violent Jews who want to build the third temple to summon the Jewish Messiah and the second coming of Jesus. And these crazy people want to sacrifice a red cow. Before I talk about the end of the world, a word about Temple Mount today. I find it interesting, yet not surprising, that Mahdi and Bassem Youssef didn't say a word about what is going on at Temple Mount today, but instead directed their attention towards the future. This is where the manipulation sets in. But let me redirect it towards the current situation at Temple Mount. So the Temple Mount is the holiest site for the Jews, where the 2 Jewish temples once stood. It is enormous, about 1/5 of the old city of Jerusalem. 9 gates lead to the Temple Mount. 8 of them are open for Muslims 24/7, while non-Muslims can only go up through one gate. Non-Muslims can go there for only 5 hours a day. Jews and Christians can't bring their Bibles with them, and they can't pray there. As a tour guide, I'm not even allowed to show my tourists a drawing of the temple. This is insane. Can you imagine what would happen if a city in Europe said that a certain part of the city were only open to Christians? But when Jews and Christians are discriminated against, no one cares. And this is not just a random place. This is the holiest site for the Jews and one of the most important places for Christians because Jesus was Jewish and he went up to the temple. Add to that 20 years ago, the Waqf, the Muslim authorities, committed one of the worst crimes known to archaeology and deliberately destroyed part of the Temple Mount to build a huge underground mosque. They accuse the Jews of wanting to destroy Al-Aqsa, but they are the ones who are destroying the place. Most of you probably never heard about this crime, but it is not surprising if you think about it. Many churches and Buddhist temples have been destroyed by Muslims. So I understand why Bassem and Mahdi like to discuss the future rather than the present. When you look at what is happening today at Temple Mount, the Muslims don't come out of it too well. And what will happen at the end of days? I don't know. But what I do know is that every group, Jews, Christians, Muslims, Catholics, Evangelicals, Orthodox, Sunni, Shias, Hasidic, is certain that they will turn out to be the true believers. I've been guiding in Jerusalem for more than 10 years. I've been on the Temple Mount, the Western Wall, and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre hundreds of times. I've heard it all. Thousands of different theories about Jesus' second coming, the Messiah, and the third temple. There is a big difference between saying that at the end of days, the third temple will be built where the two temples stood, and saying, let's blow up the Dome of the Rock. It is the Muslims who are using Al-Aqsa Mosque to instigate religious and political violence. Now, if Bassem Youssef wants to make fun of evangelical Christians, why not? You can laugh at any group. Jews, women, gays, Muslims, trans people. You can laugh about religious ceremonies like the Red Cow. But let's not pretend that evangelical Christians and Jewish extremists are as dangerous as Muslim extremists. When was the last time that evangelical Christians blew up a Catholic church? Never happened. How many Reform synagogues have been blown up by extremist settler rabbis? 0. Muslims, on the other hand, have been known to blow up quite a lot of mosques belonging to other Muslim denominations. How many Christians have evangelical Christians killed because they weren't worshipping Jesus in the right way? 0. Same with Jews. How many Muslims have been murdered by other Muslims because of minor religious differences? Hundreds of thousands, if not millions. If you had to choose, where would you rather be, gay or lesbian or atheist or just a religious minority? In a crazy evangelical area like Texas or in a Muslim area? And Bassem obviously knows all this. He had to run away from Egypt, an Arab Muslim country, because of free speech, or rather, the lack of free speech in a Muslim country. Bassem, I think you should start every morning and maybe every podcast you do with a prayer. Allah, thank you for taking me out of a Muslim country and bringing me to a Christian country like the US, where I can breathe free air and enjoy all the rights that can be found in a country based on Judeo-Christian values. I can even laugh at them and know that I'm safe. Bassem, you're welcome. And one last word. I have a lot of people asking me how they can help. I can't answer everyone privately, so below this video and other videos, I will be leaving a link to Meir Panim, which is a charity that you can volunteer for if you're in Israel and which anyone can donate to. They have different projects. One is helping Holocaust survivors, almost half of whom live in poverty. Meir Panim provides many of these survivors with food and social projects, as many of them suffer from loneliness. They supply food packages to the poor, and in the last year, they have been supporting people who have been affected by the war. We hear a lot about the fighting, but this war is being fought on many fronts, and you can help the civil front. There are many Israeli families who were evacuated from the north who need your help. A lot of businesses have collapsed because of the war and plunged families into poverty. Next week, we celebrate Rosh Hashanah, New Year, and if you want to help Israelis, now is the time to do the right thing and donate to Meir Panim. The link will be here below the video. I want to thank all my supporters. You keep me going. Like, comment, and share. See you next week. Yalla bye.